That is so beautiful. I'm going to read that line again. The world is so interconnected. No one is safe until everyone is safe. All living in harmony. And this is something from this article you can see is possible. And it doesn't even take a lot of people to make this happen. It's talking about the square root of 1% of the population. So globally, that's about 9,000 people. In the US, it's about 2,000 people. And this, I'm talking about the US because I'm from there, even though I'm currently in Europe. But, you think of any country, you find the square root of 1% of the population. For a lot of countries, this could just be hundreds of people or a few thousand people meditating together on a regular basis. That's not that many people if you really think about it. 9,000 people. I mean, I've been to concerts that were bigger than that. And I've been, in I don't know, you look at any big sporting event in a stadium or arena or just a festival, and that's how many people. I mean, it's Coachella week right now in the United States and California. I don't know how many people are at Coachella, but I'm sure it's more than 9,000 people. So we're not talking huge numbers here, but it's the consistency, and it's just the regular practice of meditating together on a daily basis. And I think that this is it's just so important, and peace is possible. It's possible. I know it doesn't seem like it because there's so much war and there's so much violence, and I watch the news and it's just the gun shootings, the violence in the United States, and the systemic racism and oppression. And it's like, God, when are we going to just get over this? When are we going to grow up and move beyond this and realize that we literally are one? And even if you don't realize that, just to follow the golden rule of treat others how you want to be treated, this is so important, and it can make such a huge difference in the world, in your local, community, and in the world around you. Just more people actually having compassion and kindness. Think what a different world it would be. Because even just looking online and at comments on YouTube or social media or news articles, it's just God, it's so it's just so discouraging sometimes. And even myself, having a background with this, this knowledge, and being in communities where people are really wanting peace and living that way, it's so disheartening sometimes just to see how much pain and suffering and misery there is in the world right now. And I see it. I've been traveling, and I recently relocated, and just walking around a city, you just see so much stress and, feel so much heavy emotion and anger and violence. And it doesn't have to be this way. I think it's really this idea that no one is safe until everyone is safe, all living in harmony. This is very real. We, of course, can live in our own little bubble. And I have spent a lot of time living in my own little bubble. And a lot of people have been in their own little bubble, especially the last few years during the pandemic. And, it can be very, it can, in some ways, although it can feel very isolating, and it's very easy to feel isolated and disconnected, and it's such a painful feeling, when you don't have that feeling of connectedness with other people. But on this deeper level, we are all one. So it's again sort of enlivening that feeling through our consciousness. It's not just a feeling, it's just a reality that we start to live it more. And I've talked a lot about near-death experiences on this channel, and I will, because I had a shared death experience a few years ago. And so I listen and research, near-death experiences and related phenomena all the time. And what people usually describe in the life review is that they're looking at their experiences as an individual from their perspective, but also everyone that they interact with are also experiencing their perspective and how other people felt about them or were affected by their own behavior. And then they realize that, that this is the unity, the oneness, that we are one thing, one being, like sharing and experiencing all these different aspects and components of relationships and dynamics in the world. And it also reminds me another thing that Maharishi talked about, in addition to, trying to create these groups, enlivening consciousness to create peace in the world. And as a teacher of Transcendental Meditation, of course, I studied this, and I'm very well aware of his teachings about higher states of consciousness and the importance of developing our individual consciousness through regular practice of Transcendental Meditation, regularly accessing that field of pure consciousness within our own awareness and enlivening it. And however one approaches this, I think it's important to remember that there are many ways to experience love and joy and harmony and bliss. And these are the qualities that are going to change the world, and feelings of connection and oneness. And there are many, many ways to do this. And I've shared, I even was interviewing Enrique from Ericeira, Portugal, ecstatic dance recently. And I've experienced that in dance events, in ecstatic dance events and different activities where we literally, are experiencing ways to connect with more people. And it's so beautiful. I'm no longer teaching Transcendental Meditation, actually, but a few years ago I started doing energy work, and I feel the electromagnetic field of energy and how it flows, and when it's moving through the energy systems, especially the heart chakra. And it's so beautiful because, especially at the end of the ecstatic dance events that I've been to, this huge flow and bubble of love sort of takes over, and it creates this this torus shape in the whole group, and it's just so cool. And I think everyone kind of tends to say, it's like, well, okay, this is the best way, Jesus is the only way, Buddha is the only way, Muhammad is the only way, this technique, this modality. But they all have the same end goal. And I think, certainly some might be more effective in one way or the other for certain things. Certain, techniques might help certain areas of the physiology more. But I think anything that you do that is going to create more health, happiness, awareness is really good, is really positive. And I think it's really important, especially since those of us who are in fields where we're wanting more peace and harmony, we have to work together. And we can't, this idea that one group or one technique or one modality might be better, it creates more separation. So I think it's really, really important just to be open. And if something's working for someone, great. I love that. I mean, I don't love when people are really, putting other people down, but when they're expressing their joy and bliss and love that they experience, whether, I listen to a lot of, different channels on spirituality, and if somebody is having a lot of bliss and good experiences because they have a connection and an appreciation for Jesus, great. I don't have that connection personally. It's not something that I can, personally directly relate to, but good for them. If it's making their life more positive and it's making them more loving and compassionate for other people, beautiful. So I think that it's really important to be open to other people's experiences and listen to them and not try and force anything on anyone. But I do want to mention this thing about higher states of consciousness and what Maharishi had taught, and that meditating regularly, you enliven more and more pure consciousness through the process of accessing pure consciousness on a regular basis. And then it becomes more stabilized in your awareness. Your physiology can support, that field of pure consciousness. Because if you're really sick or tired, let's face it, it's not easy. If you're really, really tired, you can't even, it's you don't even want to do anything. You just want to stay in bed and sleep. You get more grumpy more easily. But the more rested and able your physiology is to sustain this ginormous field of pure consciousness and bliss and love and harmony, the better. And as it becomes more stabilized, the mind has this experience of this unbounded, infinite field of pure consciousness, but then also the heart starts to expand. There's more love, there's more loving awareness, finer, subtle fields of refined emotions start to become more lively, and your perception actually starts to change. This value of love and consciousness, you start to perceive it more. You start to perceive it in other people and objects, and you see, actually, it's called celestial perception, these qualities of consciousness. And then there can be a shift where you start to understand that all that you're seeing, even though everyone and everything is different, appears different on the surface. If we're just looking at, like a tree, it's different from a horse, you can see the differences. I mentioned earlier, like watering the root to enjoy the fruit. If you have a garden, you have trees, flowers, fruits, vegetables, everything looks different on the surface. But the same field of consciousness is within everything. This field of oneness and pure consciousness starts to become the predominant thing in your awareness. So it's no longer that everything is so different. I mean, it's different, but it's beautiful. Differences are beautiful. They're strengthened. They're enhanced. We all have our individual, personalities and gifts and abilities and, creative intelligence and everything, but we can express it in unique ways. But it's still everything is connected. And it's like, again, what people describe when they have near-death experiences, and they realize that. I was listening to one recently where a man was describing, I think I even posted it in my YouTube shorts, but he was describing how he could see this huge, like just massive light, and it was like individual lights, but it was so big, and it was like, that is, it's this source energy. And I don't know if he actually referred to it as God, but he realized that this was just like this massive collection, this collective consciousness. It's just comprised of individual units, individual consciousness. So the individual is the unit of collective consciousness. And I over time, like I said, I've been meditating many, many years, and I really started to notice, I had this big shift around 2014. I had hit a rock bottom. I started to really work on my own personal SHIT had hit the fan. And I find it really interesting how much it correlates with this research and the data of how many people were meditating together, which I really had a personal connection with because I was living in that community for a long time. So I'm just an ultra sensitive person in general. I'm highly sensitive. And so as the numbers started to drop and and the practitioners started to go back to India, and the funding for the group to meditate together every day started to dissipate, this is when I really started to, I had to look at my stuff because I hit this rock bottom. All my personal childhood trauma and my self-destructive patterns had really come to the surface. And I had often sort of, in the last few years have wondered, was I spiritually bypassing by just meditating and thinking everything would be great just by meditating? And in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. And I'm actually I'm so grateful for the years that I spent just meditating and feeling much more peace and harmony as a result of that. Could I have also been doing more direct work on myself with, say, therapists or other modalities to heal my trauma? I could have, but I don't think that I was ready to. And so this meditation community really gave me sort of the soft cushion in which I could, just sort of grow and be nourished by. And I was really thriving in many ways. There were so many beautiful, positive things that happened. And I felt like I was really my evolution was just going so fast. And then this, this collective effect of the group, the consciousness of this big group meditating together, as that started to dissipate, it was I didn't have that. I was ripping the Band-Aid off for me in many ways. I don't think it's a coincidence that my experience of hitting rock bottom and starting to do 12-step recovery work coincided with this number of meditators decreasing. Yes, the power of group meditation is real, but we also have to take individual responsibility. And I feel like it's very, very important if there is something there that we look at it and we address it. And I have seen, in a lot of spiritual communities and even in my own, where people don't want to address negative problems, negative issues. And I've made other videos about this in the past on my other YouTube channel about toxic positivity and, sort of making a mood of like, oh, we should just focus on the positive. We don't want to look at the past, but sometimes we need to, especially when there's trauma. And I really started to experience more freedom and like as a result of going through very difficult examination and work, like heavy work on myself with a therapist and different modalities for trauma. And, and I'm grateful for that. It prepared me to deal with a lot of really heavy stuff that was about to happen, including a death in the family that I knew was going to be probably one of the most difficult things I would ever experience, because I did not have a good relationship with this person. And then I had another extreme traumatic loss when somebody that I was close with died by suicide 5 years ago. Today exactly is the 5-year anniversary of that. And so it was just one thing after the next. And these were all things that really caused a lot of spiritual transformation for me. Huge. These were huge STEs or spiritually transformative experiences. And so, I talk about this idea of like, was I spiritually bypassing? Is it possible for people to create peace just by like meditating? Or do we also have to do this like heavy work? And I feel like this is just my feeling, and may or may not be right, but I do feel like my generation, I'm Gen X. I was born in the 1970s, and I feel like a lot of like this generation that's around my age, like we're kind of the generation that is like the no more. I feel like a lot of our karmic role is to break these traumatic karmic cycles that have been, passed down from generation to generation. And there's, so many issues of trauma. I'm speaking again as an American in the US, but many countries, even where I'm living now, there's a lot of like former slavery and residual and genocide and residual trauma and separation as a result of that. And that's speaking on a broad sense, but of course there's individual and family trauma as well, that I feel like a lot of our role is to process it within ourselves, to heal these ancestral lines of karma and trauma. And I also feel like, and I've seen and heard this from so many people, that a lot of the younger generations right now, first of all, they're growing up in a completely different world than what people my age grew up in. We did not have the internet. We did not have cell phones. We have a totally different experience in the world. And I can't even imagine what it's like growing up right now, living online and having social media and this like constant connection through technology. It's beautiful. It's also very challenging in many ways, but I do feel like there are a lot of really spiritually evolved, advanced, gifted children and souls on the planet right now. And maybe their role is different than what, say, like my role and my, peers' role is. Maybe they don't have to do this heavy lifting of clearing trauma when, I do feel some self-examination is necessary, and self-awareness and learning tools to like work through stuff. And this can be done on many levels with, standard, there is some benefits to standard Western medicine and psychology, but also interdimensionally, I do a lot of work now that is really looking at the light body, the energy systems, and how they flow and work, and how that also affects our mind, body, spirit complex. I do the sun point energy method of realignment, and it's very powerful, and it's been very, very beneficial for me. And I do think there are a lot of young people who will just be able to just meditate and create an enlivened bliss, or use their abilities and gifts in the world to shift collective consciousness. I believe that that's why they're here, is to shift collective consciousness and support the quality of immense love and coherence and harmony that can be predominant. Like, I think that there's a lot of actual physiological purification and preparation that we as humans need to do to support these higher vibrational frequencies, higher states of consciousness. But I do think it's possible. And I think that this phase transition and this shift from the dark ages that we've been living in to a more peaceful, harmonious society and world can happen very quickly. And I believe that this meditation and the Maharishi effect, these, this group, collective effect of groups of people meditating together on a regular basis, especially doing the yogic flying in the cities, and everything that everyone is doing to better themselves and the environment, I do believe 100% that it is possible to have peace on Earth in our lifetimes.
Maybe everything's perfect. There's more than we can see.